The rain fell in steady sheets as James Hunter walked along the quiet streets of Millwood, a town he hadn't visited in years. Dressed in a simple black hoodie and jeans, James blended in with the locals. His unassuming appearance belied a past filled with harrowing missions and classified operations as a retired Navy SEAL. After 20 years of service, James sought peace, a chance to reconnect with civilian life. But peace was elusive. On a cold, rainy night, a chance encounter with the local police would shatter any illusion of tranquility. Mistaken for a vagrant, James found himself on the wrong end of an all-too-familiar story, an abuse of power. But this time, the officers had no idea who they were dealing with. James had been staying in a modest hotel on the outskirts of Millwood, a far cry from the luxury he could afford with his pension. He preferred simplicity, a trait ingrained in him after years of service. On this particular night, he walked to the local diner to grab a late dinner. As he passed by an alleyway, he noticed two police officers confronting a homeless man. Their voices were harsh, their words laced with contempt. "Get out of here, old man. We don't want your kind around," one officer sneered. James paused, his instincts kicking in. Something about the scene felt wrong. The homeless man cowered under the officer's verbal assault, his frail frame trembling in the cold. "Move along!" one of the officers barked at James. James met the officer's gaze, his expression calm but unyielding. "He's not hurting anyone. Let him be." The officer's eyes narrowed. "I said, move along." James remained where he was. "There's no need for this. He's just trying to survive." The second officer, a stocky man with a cruel smirk, stepped forward. "What's your problem, tough guy? You want to be next?" James took a step closer. "I'm just asking you to show some compassion." The first officer's patience snapped. "That's it! Hands on the wall, now!" James complied, raising his hands slowly. His years of training had taught him to pick his battles. He felt the officer's rough hands shove him against the brick wall, his cheek scraping against the cold surface. "What do we have here?" the stocky officer sneered, frisking James. "No ID? No wallet? What's a guy like you doing out here at this hour?" "Grabbing dinner," James said evenly. The officer's grip tightened. "Smart mouth. You think you're better than us?" James stayed silent, his mind calculating every move. He could disarm both officers in seconds, but that would escalate the situation. Instead, he remained calm, letting them underestimate him. "Let's teach this guy a lesson," the first officer said with a grin. Before James could react, a baton struck his ribs, sending a jolt of pain through his body. Another blow landed on his back, but James remained standing. His SEAL training had conditioned him to endure worse. "Not so tough now, are you?" the stocky officer taunted. James took a deep breath. "I've faced tougher men than you, and they didn't walk away." The officers paused, exchanging uncertain glances. There was something in James's voice, a quiet, dangerous confidence that made them uneasy. As the rain continued to fall, a third figure approached the scene. Lieutenant Sarah Bennett, a senior officer, had been patrolling nearby when she noticed the commotion. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the tension. The two officers straightened up, their smug expressions faltering. "Just dealing with a troublemaker," the first officer said. Sarah's sharp eyes scanned the scene. Her gaze settled on James, and recognition flickered across her face. "James Hunter?" she asked, stepping closer. James nodded. "It's been a while, Sarah." The two officers looked confused. "You know this guy?" Sarah's expression hardened. "He's a retired Navy SEAL, one of the best, and if you two laid a hand on him, you're going to have a problem." The officers paled, their arrogance evaporating. "We didn't know," the stocky officer stammered. "You didn't ask?" Sarah shot back. "Step away from him, now." As the officers retreated, Sarah approached James. "Are you all right?" she asked. James nodded. "I've had worse." Back at the station, Sarah sat across from James in a quiet room. "I didn't know you were back in town," she said. "Just passing through," James replied. "Didn't expect to run into trouble." Sarah sighed. "Things have changed here. We've had some bad apples on the force. I'm trying to clean it up, but it's slow going." James leaned back in his chair. "I can help." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You're retired." "Doesn't mean I'm done fighting for what's right," James said. Sarah considered his offer. "We could use someone like you, but this won't be easy." James smiled faintly. Easy was never my style. Over the next few weeks, James worked with Sarah to root out corruption within the department. He taught the younger officers discipline, respect, and integrity, values instilled in him during his time as a SEAL. The two officers who had assaulted James were suspended pending investigation. Their actions sparked a wider inquiry into misconduct within the force. James's presence sent a clear message: abuse of power would not be tolerated. One evening, James stood on the same street corner where the incident had occurred. The homeless man he'd defended approached him. "Thank you," the man said, his voice trembling. "Not many people would have stood up for me." James nodded. "Everyone deserves respect." The man smiled. "You're a good man." As James watched the man walk away, he felt a sense of purpose reignite within him. His days in the military might be over, but his fight for justice was far from finished. James Hunter came to Millwood seeking peace, but found himself drawn back into a battle against injustice. The police officers who had abused their power learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate the quiet strength of a veteran, especially one with the skills of a Navy SEAL. Through his actions, James reminded the town of Millwood that true strength lies in standing up for what's right, even when the odds are against you. And for James, the fight for justice was a mission he'd never abandon.